I really don't like the term PTSD. I prefer the term psychological injury as the general term for what happens when bad experience changes somebody. Now, there are certain bad experiences that don't involve other people that can be absolutely terrifying and lead to changes in both how the mind works and the body works. And these are basically adaptations to the real situation of seeing yourself on the verge of death. And what's in the diagnostic manual as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is not a bad description of the persistence into life after mortal danger of those adaptations. The primary injury, the uncomplicated injury, uncomplicated in the medical sense, that if a mortar fragment slices across a soldier's or Marine's arm like that, whether it breaks the bone or not, that wound is the uncomplicated or simple or primary injury. But that doesn't kill that soldier or Marine. What kills him is the complications, infection, hemorrhage. Now, I view the persistence into civilian life after battle or into life in garrison as the simple or primary injury. The persistence of the valid adaptations that you had that allowed you to survive in that situation where other human beings were really trying to kill you. And that was real, and they're doing a damn good job of it. Now, the term that I've been trying to introduce that is gaining some currency, moral injury, is something where there's the added dimension of betrayal of what's right by someone who holds legitimate authority in a high-stakes situation. There are numerous things that happen in war, that people do to each other in war, that have moral dimensions to them. But since I've been focusing on preventing psychological and moral injury in military service, I focus on those things that we really can do something about. If for our leadership practices and culture to lead to competent and ethical leadership on the ground, that would go a long way to preventing some of the moral injuries that we see frequently. Now, what the enemy does, as horrific and ugly as it is, in my view, rarely as harmful as when there is leadership malpractice in one's own forces. That's the message of the Iliad. Agamemnon betrays what's right with Achilles, and the whole tragedy is kicked off by that. One of the objections I have to the official definition of PTSD, in effect a narrowly defined fear syndrome, is that it doesn't capture what wrecks veterans' lives and their families' lives. It's the complications of this primary injury, the drug and alcohol abuse, the criminal involvements, the things that generally come from deformities of character. Now, the thing about moral injury is that character begins to change. We have bought into, in American psychiatry and in America in general, a very old idea with a great pedigree. It goes right back to Plato, and then the Stoics, and then Immanuel Kant, and then Sigmund Freud. And that idea is that if you make it out of childhood with good breeding, that would be Plato's word, and good genes, the modern term, and good upbringing, your good character is going to set like stone. Nothing bad that ever happens to you of any sort can budge you away from virtue, can budge you away from good character. Well, that idea has a great pedigree, and I'm afraid it's complete crap. It is simply wrong. If it gets bad enough, especially in moral injury, as I define it, betrayal of what's right by someone with legitimate authority in a high-stakes situation, then the character begins to change. And what happens is that one's social and moral horizon shrinks, sometimes just to oneself, the kind of mighty egotism of some people, or it shrinks to a tiny little circle. It might be just one squad within the military, or it just the person and his closest comrade. Remember, Achilles says of Patroclus, "We thought that he and I alone could tear down Troy's walls." He was saying, I don't care about the rest of the Greek forces once his moral injury by Agamemnon had been firmly established. So that shrinkage of the moral horizon and one's ideals and attachments and ambitions begin to shrink and lose the air in their lungs. They lose a capacity for caring about the well-being of others. And that does terrible, terrible harm to the veteran, to the veteran's family, to the veteran's workplace. Recovery happens, in my view, only in community. As you know, I have degrees up here and down there, credentials, but peers are the key to recovery. And I can't emphasize that enough. Credentialed mental health professionals like me, in my view, have no place in center stage. It's the veterans themselves healing each other that belong in center stage. We're stagehands. Get the lights on, sweep out the gum wrappers, count the chairs, make sure it's a safe and warm enough place. It's not that nobody can understand if you haven't been there. I am an example. I have never worn the uniform. I've never been to war. The people who are willing to listen with both their head and their heart, and to realize that it's this person in front of you or these people in front of you who know what they're talking about, and it's my job to learn from them, and they are my teachers. I went to work at the VA expecting to do something else entirely, and the veterans kidnapped me. I don't know what they saw in me, but maybe it was that I understood how ignorant I was, and I learned from them.